Good afternoon, John Donovan.
Hello.
Marty Keller here in Sacramento. You're down in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another beautiful day up here.
72 and holding. 72 and holding here.
There you go. There you go. I had the opportunity yesterday to go get my Wuhan coronavirus test.
Ah.
And, so that's the PCV test, which determines whether you actually have the virus in your body or not the antigen test. But reason I wanted to tell you that as we get going here is that it's being held at Cal Expo, and you stay in your car and you go through a line, and they've got your name based on your your reservation, and they check you off and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there in line, and I'm looking back, and I see all the cars, and I'm overcome by an emotion. And the emotion is a sense of wonder, and it's triggered by this notion that all of us have chosen to sign up to go get this test. None of us knows each other individually, and yet we're participating in this great social commitment to do what we can to address the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And I was just overcome. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, and I felt a connection. There's something about, I've experienced this before in my life when strange mass events occurred. I had the same experience after the Loma Prieta earthquake in San Francisco. And if you recall, the electricity was knocked out, so we didn't have any access to electronic media at the time. And the next morning, I remember when the electricity came back on, I turned on the TV, and I just noticed the whole world was watching. And I felt that same sense of being connected to something.
Mm-hmm.
And I raised that because I think this is this energetic joy is related to what we're talking about, the connecting to that deepest part of ourselves that wants to feel at one with one another, at one with spirit. And that really what we're talking about with the accountability practice is learning to notice the obstacles that resist that.
Yeah.
And to apply these tools to changing the resistance, to changing resistance to assistance, as I like to say.
Yeah, and actually not move. One of my principles that I work with in working with individuals is what you resist persists. So not resisting anything, being non-judgmental, non-blaming about exactly where I find myself, and see that place is in alignment with the information that I've been taking in all my life to create my perception, which is now my reality. And I've experienced that feeling of oneness at various times. They come up in crisis when somebody's in a crisis, like the earthquake, and they're in under a collapsed bridge. You know, the guy helping them doesn't look in there and go, "Are you a doctor or are you a garbage man?" They just help. That feeling is just there. So,
right.
Yeah.
So so using that as maybe a framework for the discussion in our work, many different people get attracted to what we could call psychic healing, transcendence. I mean, there's a lot of words for what's bringing us here. And I'm curious, for the purpose of somebody who may be hearing this for the very first time, Would you be willing to just share a little bit about how you got started with this practice and maybe a little bit how it works for you today?
I found myself at a place where I just decided I need help. I was separated from my wife, from my children. I was living in a friend's room, and I decided to go to a 12-step meeting. Um, and when I got there, I heard myself say, "Hi," and instead of what I thought might have happened or what I predicted might would have happened, people simply just acknowledged it because they had the same experience. They knew the same thing, and it was accepted. It wasn't judged or blamed. um, and I simply made the decision to come back. And in this process of my own recovery, I wanted to understand why it was so difficult for me simply to stop the things I really didn't want to do. Not stop the things that were pleasurable or felt good, or the things that I had attempted time after time after time to change, and I found myself time after time in the same behavior. One of those was drinking alcohol. The other one was being arrogant, mean to the people I said I loved, um, and I wanted relief. Um, and I started looking. I just started looking for how. I had no idea. What I wanted at the beginning was a moment of peace where this critical mind would just shut down for a moment. I just wanted a moment, and I found that, and then it changed to it is my intent to be nonviolent when I discovered that what I was calling arrogant, entitled, mean was actually the behavior of coercion and violence towards the people in my life. And I went to a class, and they simply said, if you're here, you're a violent man, which got me out of denial. And they said, this is the way out, be accountable for the behavior, and make an agreement not to do it again, and then pay attention to what you do. I started working in the jails with violent offenders and addicts in a violence intervention program. And there I understood that they weren't hearing the thing I was saying, and I couldn't understand why they would like not hear what I'm saying. And then I got into what's this mechanism, and I did a workshop that I had to go to a class for, and in that workshop they talked about a reticular activating system, this net-like group of cells that filter out non-essential information based on what your belief is or how you see the world. So somebody telling me before I decided to go to AA that I needed AA simply got filtered out as non-essential to it's Miller time. I deserve this. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't have a problem with it. Other people have a problem with it. And as soon as I said, hi, my name's John, I'm an alcoholic, all that information about any alternative was it was available to me. And it was like I was hearing for the first time what people were saying to me for years. Um, so I developed this program inside the jail to get through that mechanism. And for me, it was anybody that said anything about don't drink. This mechanism would, in its attempt to keep me safe, which is drinking alcohol as an alcoholic, it would filter what other people were saying. It would also turn it into confirm the belief I had about who I was and how I saw the world.
Okay, so if it's okay, let's. I'd like to dig deeper into a couple of the things that you said. You said a lot,
I
Um,
did. I know.
no, it's good
Uh,
stuff. And if I
yeah.
were here for the first time, I would want to have a little more clarity and detail about each of these things. So, the first thing that I heard that from my own experience in working with you in the accountability practice, I find powerful and important is that when you said, "Hi, my name's John, I'm an alcoholic," you received acceptance.
Hmm.
And can you talk a little bit about why that's so important to this work and what the power of that was for you in that moment and even now as you continue to find out stuff about yourself that you may not want to own, and find the wherewithal to not to own it about yourself as I seek to do without blaming or judging myself.
Well,
How is that acceptance so important and powerful?
it's in this mechanism I've been talking about, the reticular activating system. It's also called the fight, flight, freeze mechanism. It's our innate ability to survive. It's our ability to stay focused on a task. Reticular activating system filters out non-essential information based on what the task is. If we had to remember everything that ever happened to us and then go through that every time we had to make a decision, we would make a decision or it'd be too late. Would something happen and we'd get hurt or die? So this mechanism actually is helping us, and it's filtering out non-essential information based on what the belief is. And here's the kicker: the most of your beliefs, most of your experience, my experience, has been relegated to the subconscious part of my memory. So I don't have access to it, nor a working memory of it. And yet it influences my decision, drink or not drink. And being that this memory of mine full of trauma wanted relief, and alcohol gave me that relief, this mechanism coming into my service would do everything it could to get the beer in my hand. Even though my conscious mind said, no, I don't want this today, or no, I don't want this, or I should quit, every time I resisted what this mechanism thought was for my well-being, it would either cut off my rational mind, I would rationalize something, and I would find myself with a beer in my hand or alcohol some way, somehow. And it was baffling to me. And once I understood that it was simply my total experience, 7/8 of it subconscious, believing that my well being was tied to alcohol and did everything in its power to move me to alcohol in a benevolent, loving way. I know that doesn't make any sense, but it is subjective. It says alcohol equals pleasure or relief. It doesn't equivocate, doesn't ask why. It's simply, okay, that's what we're going to do. That's what that I'm charged with your safety, and your safety is connected to and drinking alcohol.
Wouldn't you say that? So you use the word belief. I have this belief that I'm safe when I use alcohol, but wouldn't you say that it's not belief in the formal sense of a statement? It's really more of a state of being that that can only behave in this particular way because it is responding to the desire to stay safe, secure, and alive. It's not a thinking activity. It's more instinctive or impulsive.
Well,
And I
okay,
raise that because it's
yeah,
difficult.
it's good.
You know, the rational mind thinks there's rational information here, and so whatever shows up for me as a compulsion, I have a belief. There's that word that somehow I can think my way into dissolving the compulsion, and it's not accessible by thinking.
No, it's not. And now, when you're talking, I went 2 or 3 places. The place I am at now is that if the reticular activating system filters out non-essential information based on what the belief or focus is, my total experience has created a perception of who I am and how I relate to the rest of the world. In that perception, from my childhood of origin trauma, there's copious amounts of information that say I am not good enough. It has taken that as truth and then manifested for me a place where I can prove that right or stay safe. So when I have a perceived criticism, somebody criticizes me, this mechanism will put me in a freeze mode, because that's how I survived as a child. I would either freeze or I'd stomp my feet and run upstairs. So when I get into an issue with a partner and I feel challenged, or this belief feels challenged, I would stomp my feet and run upstairs and then have to explain it in real adult time, the reason for that. And the reason can only be there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with her, and then try to work it out with the evidence in the current reality, which has nothing to do with my perception, which has become a belief or a focus, subconscious, not even in my awareness.
And it's I've heard you use the word insidious and subtle. It's an insidious and subtle syndrome, and part of for me, the experience that it's reason makes it so, what makes it so insidious is that it's an emotional state, and you can't argue with an emotion.
Right.
And so
Right.
part of what you've taught me in this is that, and that's why I wanted to focus on this acceptance issue, is that I'm trained by my survival mechanism to avoid certain emotions. And those emotions are extremely painful, and they're evocative of an experience I had as a little kid in not being accepted in whatever way. Don't feel that way. Don't be a crybaby. Don't be a sissy. Whatever the message was, what I internalize it to be is there's something wrong with me when I do these behaviors. And so now I must develop a way to not feel whatever was causing me to cry or behave in this way that got criticized, or I have to be able to push it off on somebody else. But either way, I don't want to feel it. And the truth is that the only way to grow into my fullest potential is to allow whatever is showing up to be felt in the way it wants to be felt. And so I have to learn to accept those feelings and to be with them, move to my pain, even though everything in me wants to avoid it.
Yes.
And so when someone says to me, I want to hear about your experience with this pain, that is something I never heard as a kid. That's like opening up a whole new kingdom.
The trauma and the perception I had as a child in a dysfunctional family has been imprinted on my memory and um, um, nervous system as a frequency, emotion, feeling. Some of it is pre-verbal, and some of it is just simply not verbal. And to that emotional imprint created the running away, the pattern of leaving a relationship when things got tough, whether I understood it or not, created the pattern of lashing out at people in an emotional or verbally coercive or violent way, using my voice to threaten people so they back off. These behaviors came from an emotional imprint trauma experience that I came to believe is my way of being safe, keeping myself safe, and forgot it. And it's still motivating me on a moment by moment basis in my everyday decisions, and I don't know it. and I'm trying my hardest to be intelligent, get it right, don't make the same mistake twice, um,
Look good.
fix things, look good, and I couldn't just own. Well, for me as a man, my programming said, "Don't ever say you don't know." Just to be able to say, "I don't know," and I'm lost. I need help. I didn't say that till I was 42, 43, 45. With years of recovery, was I able to go, oh, I can ask for help. And that wasn't that it wasn't doable for me. It wasn't available to me based on this subconscious pool of information. We can call it trauma, we can call it perception, that had determined that if I asked for help, I would be devalued and lose my life. This mechanism is fight, flight, freeze, life or death. So a critical comment became equivalent to a life or death situation. The life or death situation obviously wasn't happening in my current reality, and I would act with energy that was not in alignment with the event. And that's what was baffling to me.
So
So,
one of the dynamics that I want to explore a little bit more based on what you shared in terms of your initial process has to do with how did you move from being willing to be accepted in the group? I'm an alcoholic. Hey, John, welcome. To self-acceptance.
wow,
What's
that
that?
that
Can you tell us a little bit about that process for you? Because you later on said when you went into the violent cessation thing, you said, "I'm John. I'm a violent man." So all of those things. If I'm hearing this for the first time, it sounds so matter of fact. But if I were to say it for myself, I might not even be able to utter the words.
right. The the self acceptance came in a way that was 180 degrees out of anything I could have imagined and how it would come. In my trauma, in my um, memory that was traumatized and conditioned is the word I'm looking for. It had a directive for me not to be weak. So I was holding information on myself that was partially conscious that I had done some pretty heinous, mean, tragic, hurtful things. And I felt afraid, scared, and I did feel weak or inadequate, and I didn't want anybody to know it. So for me to tell the truth about where I was meant that I had to own that part of myself, and this mechanism, along with my conscious thought, was working every way it could to keep me from that truth because it believed that truth would reinforce the truth and everybody find out about me and I'd be alone and um, and I wouldn't belong anywhere and I'd be ostracized is the word I'm looking for. So when I found the way was to own that truth that I wanted to hide the most. It happened in a workshop, and it happened. So there's no one event that happened. It was a process, and this all this information came together over a period of years. I was in a workshop where I received feedback from the other people in the workshop, and it wasn't pretty. It was you're codependent, you're a liar, you're mean. One of the things was you're a womanizer, and I'm like in tears. I felt the truth of what they were saying. I felt the sadness of that truth. And at the same time, I felt a relief from holding on to the lie of these things about me that somebody else told me and I assumed as my own. So that was counterintuitive. It was the backdoor way. So me owning, number one, that I was an alcoholic was an example of that. Me owning that I was, let me put it in these terms, I'm a bad dad. And the statement from the person who gave me the feedback was, John, you are dangerous to your children. And it was like, and I felt that truth. I didn't understand it. And then it became, what came to me is, I want to be a loving father. And that was the transformation, that what we call the ugly truth, or the truth I don't want anybody to know. As soon as I said it in a group of people who were looking to heal instead of blame and judge, this transformation happened. And it was at times subtle and at other times just profound. And I found myself acting differently. The behavior changed as I took on the truth about where I found myself. Bad dad, alcoholic, arrogant, entitled. And from the owning of that truth, I created an intent to move to some other place. To be in the present moment, there's three questions I ask myself. Who am I? Where am I? And what do I want? In the awareness of those three questions, in knowing the answer to those three questions, I'm in the present moment. I know who I am, I know where I'm at, and I know what I want. The truth about bad dad, arrogant, was where I was. In alignment with the trauma that I received as a child. Not right or wrong, good or bad, judgment or blame, simply in alignment, and it hurt. And it was sad, and I was angry. So all these emotions happened, and in that feeling of emotion, that high intensity of that truth, I said to myself, I want to be a loving father. I didn't know it at the time, but it attached to that vibration and then simply went back down into that pool of information, changed, different, not better, not I'm fixed, different. So now I could just simply pay attention to what was happening in my behaviors and my perception and know that that difference was attributable to the awareness that I had, the truth that I spoke.
So I share with you a similar experience of my own. Again, just to help somebody who might be hearing this for the first time get a sense of what we're talking about. It was actually in our men's group that you were facilitating.
Mm-hmm.
And I was struggling with financial debt. And
Yeah.
I had twice gotten myself in a deep hole with the IRS, and I owed back taxes. And I remember the first time I worked real hard to clean it up, and I said, I'll never do this again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and 2 years, 3 years later, I don't remember exactly what the interval was. I found myself in the exact same situation.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were, working with these issues of these compulsions and these seemingly intractable, invisible forces that were not making me do, but seemed to be making me do the same thing that I said I wouldn't do.
Right.
My aha moment was as I was reviewing the fact that I would wake up in the middle of the night with these fantasies of being dispossessed of my house and living in the streets. I came to the realization that I liked that energy. I liked there. I mean, it didn't make any sense to me that, like you said,
Yeah.
counterintuitive, but it just, my aha moment was, wait a minute, if I'm generating this at this level of intensity, there's a reward. And so I said to the group, I, I like being in debt. I'm willing to own that I like being in debt. And I had that combination of shame. I could feel the heat rising in my whole face, but also the relief that you talked about. It's like,
Okay.
I don't have to hide from this anymore. And
No.
my experience was, not only did the group not kick me out, certain group just allowed me to speak what my truth was, which was healing in itself. But it also allowed me to reflect, well, if I can own this about myself, what else can I own about myself that I'm not willing to? And so for me, similar to your experience, that started me on this journey of experimenting with self-acceptance to find more and more hidden beliefs about myself that I didn't want anybody to know and be willing to own them. And the key words that I learned from you that then got animated was no blame, no judgment. I liked being in debt. There's no blame or judgment attached to it. That's just what was going on. And in, again, as you said, in that energy, I could say, well, what do I want? Well, I want to be prosperous.
Yes.
So just from a demonstration point of view, um, I got out of debt fairly quickly after that, and I have money in the bank, and I'm well taken care
Yeah.
of financially today through
Right.
no actual effort other than releasing this commitment to being indebted,
Yes.
which turned out just to be, I mean, we can explore the psychodynamics of that sometime, but it was just a way of feeling loved that I just didn't understand.
Let me make, there were several points that I wanted to make as I was listening to you talk, but the point I want to make now is that when you had this feeling of liking being in debt, you manifested it. When you discovered the feeling of liking being in debt and changed it to I want to be prosperous, you manifested it.
Right.
These subconscious beliefs and trauma, I'm not worthy, I don't trust people, I have a fear of abandonment, come from information received as children and young adults that told us we were not worthy. There was a condition on love. We had to perform to get love. We had to be a certain way other than who we were to be food, shelter, clothing, which equated to love and safety. Now I'm again, I manifested all those beliefs in my current reality as an adult. I'm not worthy. I have fear of abandonment, so everybody kept leaving me, or I would leave them first. I didn't trust anybody, so people became untrustworthy. When I owned, like I'm a bad dad, and I told myself it is my intent to be a loving dad, revisiting that, the intent came out, it is my intent to be a loving, caring, nurturing father. And in that moment, I thought to myself, loving, caring, how do I do that? And I said, well, wait a minute. What would a loving, caring, nurturing father do when he noticed he was mean to his children? He would say, that was mean, and it is my intent to be a loving, caring, nurturing father. So I became, it was instantaneous in the acceptance of where I found myself as mean father based and in alignment with the information. Now I'm in loving, caring, nurturing father in alignment now still with the information. The manifestation comes from me always. And the manifestation comes from you. And we attribute it to outside influences, luck. No. This is the crux of the matter. When people talk about healing, and there's some really high powered people that I listen to, what they miss is this, what Christ told us. These and more you will also do. And then, that's my experience. Now, I'm not moving mountains. I actually like where the mountains are around here. I like where they're at, so I'm not going to move mountains. and my life has become in direct relationship to what I'm holding in my heart, so I can notice how I perceive the world. If I have judgment or blame or feelings of inadequacy, I simply own them and then say what I want. And I'm finding myself in a place that I could not have imagined from when I started this process. I get that connection. And actually, that's the connection I would like everybody listening to us to get at some level, that their reality is in direct relationship to their experience and how they've come to perceive themselves in relationship to people, places, and things.
So let's drill down into that a little bit. I had an experience
Yeah.
last night that might be a springboard for this conversation. So we had our Thursday night Rusty Nail meeting, and we had somebody join us who hadn't been with us for a while. And after the meeting was over, and she came late, so she didn't really have much of a chance to participate. She called me and said she wanted to talk, and she um, shared with me this a fairly extensive um, emotional state whereby she is enmeshed with her husband, whom she's now leaving, and she keeps wanting to fix him, because even though she knows that she can't do that. And it was as I was listening, what I heard was that there's this compulsion to make herself wrong and to try to get fixed. And she's in recovery. She's in 12 steps as well. And so I was I was actually feeling quite helpless as I was listening, because everything that crossed my mind was, um, if not judgmental, it was analytical, and
Mm-hmm.
it was, well, you need to do this kind of focus. And I was also aware that it's not my job to do that. That she didn't call me for that. She called me because she wanted someone to listen and to accept her. And so, um, as we encounter people who are suffering, how what's your first response when you come across a situation like that, in terms of, um, my impulse was to want to help,
Mm-hmm.
and I also have enough wisdom to know that there's nothing I could do to help in the traditional sense of get in there and, you know reconnect the gears so the car runs. It's not like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
All I could do was, again, listen and do my best to refrain from helping. That was really tough
Yeah.
to do.
So yeah, I would listen and validate. I hear you're in pain. I hear you're in confusion. I hear you're struggling with this. And then ask them, what is it you want? And talk to her or him about what is it they really want. Um, with my awareness of this mechanism, reticular activating system, filtering out non-essential information, if she wants to make him bad, I don't want to participate in that. And if that's all she knows, I can tell her that that doesn't serve me, or would you be willing, ask her a different question. Um, so when somebody figures out what they want, then I will I'll tell them, I'll give you the information that is in alignment with what you say you want, because it's not going to make any sense to you unless you tell me or ask me, because this mechanism has a field of vision based on what their basic belief is and experience and trauma is. So if they say, I want a healthy relationship, I say, okay. And then I start this reticular activating system now allows in information in alignment with that request. And then I'll start talking about um, setting boundaries or how this mechanism works, um, and assist the person to look inside to see how they're participating in the struggle that has created the situation. And usually what I find in there, the three universal fears are abandonment, separation, unworthiness, or trust and surrender. And those are the feelings and experiences that we could have gotten as young children from guardians that were healthy themselves. I received from my parents what they had, no more, no less. And this is how this intergenerational thing gets passed on. I picked that up, and then my life became motivated by that information. And I had worthiness issues. I had fear of abandonment, separation, big time, and I didn't trust. And you talk about surrender. I would never surrender. So I bring wherever that person's at. Let's name where you're at. Where are you right now? And then start this process. And it's really, there's no one answer to this question, depending on where they're at, how the situation's going, determines, there's different ways to get there. What you resist persists. The issue is never the issue. What you're focusing on is the problem. You need to focus on the motivation for your participation in there's all kinds of ways to go to it. Oh, one of the questions in a group setting, I will ask the participants, the new people, 3 questions. Have you ever hurt somebody you loved, regretted it, and then did it again, usually in the same way? Have you ever been in an argument with somebody and in the middle of the argument got that you were on the wrong side and you continue to argue anyway? Or have you ever been in a situation where you knew what you were about to do, you would regret, and you heard a little voice in your mind say, stop, don't do that, and you found that you couldn't or wouldn't? And then I start explaining the mechanism, which is what we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes, is that mechanism that is full of information, misinformation, that is manifesting in my life. And if I address the information source, own it, transform it, or reframe it, set it back down in, the situation changes automatically from my perception right from now. And then I can address what I see now.
Yeah, what as I'm listening to you, I'm reflecting on the experience I had last night, and what I notice is that I felt overwhelmed by the emotion and the sadness and the shame that was in her conversation, and I was not able to separate myself from it well enough to achieve that level of owning my own projection so that I could stay present. I mean, I was struggling mightily, and there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying there was anything wrong. I'm just seeking to learn from the experience so that when someone is asking for relief, I'm capable of asking the right question more quickly than I was last night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So what I didn't do was I didn't get to what do you want. It crossed my mind to get there, and I may have asked that question in not quite so direct a manner, but because I have enough wisdom to know that she already has the answers, and she just doesn't have the right questions yet.
Right. Yeah. So it varies with the person, and like where I'm at when the person comes to me,
Right.
all kinds of things.
But that's what I love about the process is that everything that occurs as we work through all of our internal experiences offer me an opportunity to learn something. And, you know, that took a long time to get to.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the process that you're sharing with us this afternoon, as you said, occurred over years. And I think that part of my challenge was I had to learn some patience, because if I didn't get it right away, then it became new fodder for the old ammunition. What's
Right.
wrong with you? You're not getting this.
Right.
Everybody else is getting it. Why aren't you? And then back into, you know, self-violence and the feeling safe in that older way of being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody wants to move from wherever they're at to joy, joy, joy. And there's steps. There's steps um, to build the capacity to perceive and see and be that way. And that's what this process does. Wherever the person is, and like I said, I've been working in the jails. I start with where they're at. If they're looking at 25 to life, or they're doing 6 months, I start with where they're at, and start from there. And it works. It worked for me. And where I was at when I first started, I didn't believe there was any hope whatsoever for me. And here I sit talking to you about this this material. There was something I was thinking while you were speaking, but I lost it. But that's okay.
It's all right. One of the things that we started out talking about is that there is inherent in all of us, and you elaborate a little bit more in the middle of today's discussion, inherent with us this creative capacity to generate any experience, any frame of mind, because we generated the one that we're defending as little kids. I mean, it's a remarkable property of a human being that from the very beginning we're able to shape this reality that we're experiencing, and we're doing it completely unconsciously.
Yes.
So it seems to me that all of the, particularly the Western spiritual traditions and possibly the Eastern ones, are all about learning mastery of this process, learning to identify with it and to master it rather than be mastered by it. And it seems to me that the accountability process has this amazing capacity to help me see that I've been creating my reality all along, to be willing to accept it. Okay, I did that. I created being in debt. I created identity with being in debt. I created enjoyment of being in debt. And therefore, once I become aware of that, I can create something else. Or I can create staying in debt.
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
No.
And that's the big shift. It's like, it doesn't matter what I create, I can create whatever. And the key thing is to learn to appreciate the creator that I am and that we all are.
That's we talk about the spirituality, Christ-like, mastering. Well, actually, my life in San Diego is about making sure I eat, making sure I have time to visit with my grandson. Whatever the idea of master is, I don't want that. I want my life. If there's mastery, and I believe there's mastery in the mundane, I don't even want to call it mundane because it's not mundane when I'm tickling my 4-year-old grandson. And it's not mundane when I'm talking to my daughter or walking, doing my walk or working. The mastery isn't for separate from people. It's allowing me to connect with people. So that's what I want. If you want to call that mastery, that's the mastery I want. And then be a source for the larger community to feel the same comfort, safety, and connection, and then let's start living this life as a community differently. Um, that's the mastery I want. I don't know. It's like spirituality, higher consciousness, enlightenment, and we still do the laundry. The laundry is still there, and that's fine with. I'm not wanting to separate myself from other people. I'm wanting to have the capacity to connect to them on a deep level. I want that mastery, and then be there and be a guidepost, go-to elder uh, in my community. Um, I'm coming to believe that that's what the new earth is. That's ushering in the new earth, is me feeling safe inside me, creating safety for those people around me in a larger and larger sphere of caring and concern. Damn, I like that. That felt good to articulate it that way anyway. So
You make me, you remind me of basically what gets said in the book of Revelation. Talk about the New Jerusalem. It's pretty much what you just said.
yeah, yeah, it's not some other place. Everybody wants to, there's a celestial place where we can be happy. Well, if you take a look around, we're on a blue ball spinning 1,000 miles an hour in the we're celestial. Earth is a celestial body, and I'm on it. So I want to make the best of that.
I say amen.
Okay, okay. So, and getting clear this mechanism is what I want to do. Offer people relief in knowing that they're not wrong or bad, nor are they good or great. They're simply in alignment with the information they've received, and they're manifesting their current reality. Um, Sometimes co-creating it. For me, it was I created it, and then I enlisted other people to help me prove that I was not good or they were not good, and everybody complied. So let's stop that, see our brilliance and magnificence, and collude around that, and see where we go.
Well, as we come to an end to our time together today, I'd like to ask if somebody is interested in engaging with this, how can they do that?
But I have a website, and there's contact information in the website.
And
And
that information is at the end of this video. So if you'd like to find out how to get a hold of John's website, just stay tuned.
also, email. I don't know if the email's on the end of this. My email. Maybe I can just say it.
Yeah.
Donovan Black Oak at yahoo.com. That's DONOVAN Black BLACK Oak OAK at yahoo.com. And shoot me an email. If it doesn't go to spam, I'll check my spam. I'll do whatever I need to do.
Also, for those who are interested in checking out a meeting that's based on these principles, we here in Sacramento, we host a twice weekly meeting at 6:30 p.m. Mondays and 6:30 p.m. Thursdays. We call it the Rusty Nail Club. And we call it that because sometimes people like sitting on that old rusty nail on the porch because the pain ain't hard enough or ain't acute enough to get up and off of it. So information on how to join us that is also at the end of this video. You can, it's got my email address, and I'm willing to send you the invitation. It's a Zoom meeting these days as we live in the Zoomtopia. Once we open back up physically, that'll be a challenge on how to help get people to participate, but let that be a good challenge to us. So we welcome anybody that would like to come to a meeting via Zoom and work with other people. We usually have a dozen people that are all working together using these principles that John's discussing on these podcasts. And it's important to check it out because it's practical. It's something that we do through actual learning about ourselves, learning about our truth, learning about the things that seem hidden to us. The group consciousness helps bring those out, which is why I love being in the group meetings, because the group can see for me what I can't see for myself. And the group always does it with love, compassion, and commitment. So I think, John, is it your observation that I got traumatized among people, I'm going to get healed among people?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm also going to check out the episodes and see if there's any comments, and maybe there's some people already doing it in the comments section. So
Great.
yeah. Okay.
Well, any last words before we wrap it up for today?
Uh, hang in there. Relief is in sight. It's just, yeah. Wait for the miracle. Wait for the miracle to happen.
Well, I would add, feel free to ask God to help.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask for help.
We're not alone.
Yeah. Thank you, Marty.
All right. Well, have a great Memorial Day, John, and we'll talk to you next week.
Got it.
All right.
Okay.